The night feels quiet now. There is a kind of stillness that settles in slowly, like soft dust drifting through the air. It is the kind of stillness that makes the world feel far away. As if everything modern has stepped back for a while, and something older, something slower, is gently returning. If you listen closely, you might begin to hear it. A distant echo of footsteps on stone. The faint creak of wooden floors. The soft rustle of fabric, heavy and worn. And somewhere in that quiet distance, there are children. Not the kind of childhood we often imagine today. Not filled with long afternoons of play or endless choices. But something quieter. Something more restrained. A childhood shaped by routine, by duty, and by a quiet kind of acceptance. Tonight, we move gently into that world. Into the lives of children who grew up during the long and steady stretch of the Victorian age. A time when life moved at a different pace. When days followed patterns that rarely changed. When expectations were set early, and rarely questioned. The air in this world feels different. It carries the scent of coal smoke, faint but constant. It lingers in narrow streets and settles into the fabric of clothes. It drifts through small windows and rests quietly in the corners of modest homes. Morning begins early here. Before the sun fully rises, before warmth touches the ground, there is already movement. In small houses lined along crowded streets, children begin to wake. Not suddenly. Not with alarm. But slowly, as if their bodies already understand what the day will require. There is no rush of excitement. Only the quiet understanding that the day has begun. A thin blanket is folded back. The floor beneath bare feet is cold. It often remains cold, even as the day goes on. There is no complaint about this. No pause to consider it. It is simply how things are. Clothes are simple. Rough fabric, worn from repeated use. Shirts that have been mended more than once. Dresses that carry small signs of careful repair. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is replaced unless it must be. Buttons are fastened slowly. Hands, still small and young, move with quiet care. These are hands already used to responsibility. Hands that have learned, without being told, that small mistakes can bring trouble. So they move carefully. Thoughtfully. In the dim light of early morning, a child might glance toward a window. Outside, the sky is pale. The streets are still. But not for long. Soon, the world will begin its steady motion. And the child knows this. There is no need to say it aloud. In the corner of the room, there may be others. Brothers. Sisters. Each one waking in their own quiet way. There is little conversation. Words are saved for when they are needed. Silence is not uncomfortable here. It is simply part of life. Downstairs, if there is a downstairs, the air feels slightly warmer. A small fire might already be lit. Or perhaps it is just beginning. The faint crackle of burning coal creates a gentle rhythm. Not loud. Not bright. Just enough to take the edge off the cold. Breakfast is simple. Very simple. A piece of bread, perhaps slightly stale. A thin spread of something if it is available. Sometimes porridge, slow and plain. Warm, but not rich. It fills the stomach, but only just. Children do not linger over food. They eat steadily, quietly. There is no sense of indulgence. Food is not something to enjoy slowly. It is something to prepare the body for the hours ahead. And those hours will be long. Very long. In many homes, children do not ask what the day will bring. They already know. The shape of the day rarely changes. It follows a pattern that has been repeated so many times that it no longer needs explanation. Work. That word sits quietly in the background of everything. For some children, it means helping inside the home. Cleaning. Carrying water. Watching younger siblings. Small tasks that never seem to end, but are never spoken of as burdens. For others, it means stepping outside. Into streets that are slowly filling with movement. Shops opening. Carts rolling over uneven ground. The distant sound of factories beginning their day. A low hum, growing steadily, like a breath being drawn in by the entire city. Children walk through this world with purpose. Not hurried. Not distracted. But steady. There is no expectation of choice. No moment where a child pauses and wonders what they would rather do. That question does not take shape here. It does not belong to this time. Instead, there is something else. Acceptance. Not forced. Not dramatic. Just quiet and constant. A child knows their place in the day. And the day unfolds exactly as expected. In wealthier homes, the pattern looks different, but the feeling is not entirely unfamiliar. Children there also rise early. They are dressed more carefully. Their clothes are finer, their surroundings more comfortable. But even here, there is structure. There are rules. There is expectation. Lessons begin soon after breakfast. Reading. Writing. Arithmetic. Sometimes music. Sometimes languages. The sound of a teacher's voice fills the room, calm but firm. Mistakes are corrected gently, or sometimes not so gently. Even in comfort, there is discipline. Even in quiet rooms filled with books, there is a sense that childhood is not entirely free. Time is guided. Movements are observed. Expectations are clear. Across all levels of society, there is a shared understanding. Children are being shaped. Not asked who they want to become, but guided toward what they are expected to be. And in this world, that expectation feels natural. It does not press heavily on the mind. It simply exists. Like the walls of a house. Like the turning of the seasons. It is there, and so life moves within it. As the morning grows brighter, the streets become louder. But even in the noise, there is a rhythm. Predictable. Repeating. A boy might walk beside his father, learning not through words, but through watching. A girl might follow her mother, observing each small task, understanding without needing explanation. Lessons are not always spoken. Often, they are lived. And slowly, without noticing, children begin to carry those lessons inside them. Not as rules, but as habits. As quiet understandings. As ways of being. The sun climbs higher, though its warmth does not always reach the narrow streets below. Shadows linger. The air remains cool in many places. But the day continues, steady and unbroken. And through it all, children move forward. Not questioning. Not resisting. Simply continuing. Because in this world, there is comfort in knowing what comes next. Even if what comes next is hard. Even if it is tiring. Even if it leaves little room for rest. There is still a kind of calm in it. A quiet certainty. And so, the day unfolds, slowly, gently, exactly as it always has. The morning settles fully now. Light spreads slowly across rooftops and narrow streets, touching brick and stone with a pale, quiet glow. It does not rush. It never rushes in this world. It simply arrives, gently and without announcement, as if it has always been there. The sounds of the day grow a little stronger. Wheels roll over uneven ground. Doors open and close. Voices begin to rise, though never too loudly, never all at once. Everything builds in layers, like a steady rhythm that people have learned to follow without thinking. Children move within that rhythm. Their steps are small but certain. There is no wandering, no hesitation. Each path has been walked before, many times, and their feet seem to remember it even when their minds are quiet. Some children disappear into workshops. The air inside feels different. Heavier. Still. The smell of wood, dust, oil, or cloth hangs low, never fully leaving. Light enters through small windows, often softened by grime or age, creating a dim, steady glow that never quite changes. Work begins without ceremony. There is no signal, no clear beginning. It simply starts. Hands reach for tools. Small fingers adjust to tasks that once felt unfamiliar, but now feel almost natural. Movements repeat, again and again, until they no longer require thought. A boy might sand a piece of wood, back and forth, the motion steady and endless. A girl might stitch fabric, each small movement careful and exact, the thread passing through cloth in a quiet, repeating pattern. There is little conversation. Words are not needed for tasks that are already understood. Silence fills the space, broken only by the soft sounds of work. The scrape of wood. The pull of thread. The occasional quiet instruction from an older voice. Time passes, though it is not measured closely. There are no clocks in many of these spaces. No clear reminders of how long the day has been. Instead, time is felt through the body. Through the slow build of tiredness in the arms, the slight stiffness in the back, the gentle ache that settles in without asking permission. And still, the work continues. Outside, the streets carry their own steady life. Children who do not work indoors move through open spaces, but not in play. They carry things. Small bundles. Messages. Tools. Each task is simple, but together they fill the hours completely. A young child might walk carefully along a busy street, holding something that must not be dropped. Their eyes remain focused, not wandering, not distracted by the movement around them. There is an understanding here. A quiet awareness that even small responsibilities matter. Mistakes are not taken lightly. But fear is not always present. Instead, there is something softer. A steady effort to do things correctly. To move carefully. To complete each task as it should be done. In wealthier parts of the city, the day unfolds with a different texture. Rooms are larger. Windows are clearer. Light moves more freely across polished floors and soft fabrics. The air feels lighter, though still touched by the faint presence of the outside world. Children sit at desks. Books open before them, pages filled with careful lines of text. Their fingers trace words slowly, learning not only what they say, but how they should be spoken. Their voices are soft, measured, guided gently by those who teach them. There is repetition here too. Lessons are practiced again and again, not in a rush, but in a quiet, steady way. Each word, each number, each line of writing becomes familiar through time. A mistake might bring a pause. A correction. And then, the lesson continues. There is no anger in most moments. Only expectation. A calm, consistent expectation that effort will be given, that attention will be held, that progress will come slowly but surely. And so, the children learn. Not quickly, but deeply. Back in the working streets, the pace never changes. The day does not speed up. It does not slow down. It remains steady, almost unbroken, like a long breath that has been held for hours. There are brief pauses. Moments where hands rest, where shoulders lower slightly, where eyes close just for a second longer than usual. But these pauses are short. They do not last. They are not meant to. Food may come again, but only lightly. A small piece of bread. A sip of something warm if it is available. Just enough to continue. Never enough to feel full comfort. And still, there is no complaint. Not because the children do not feel tired. They do. Not because they do not notice the hunger. They do. But because these feelings are familiar. They are part of the day, just as much as the work itself. And when something is always present, always expected, it begins to lose its sharpness. It becomes softer. Easier to carry. The sun moves slowly across the sky. In narrow streets, its light shifts from one wall to another, creating gentle patterns that pass unnoticed by most. Inside workshops, the change is even quieter, felt only through the slight dimming or brightening of the room. Hours pass in this way. Quietly. Steadily. Without interruption. A child may glance up for a moment. Not to escape, not to question, but simply to rest their eyes. To take in the space around them. The worn surfaces. The familiar shapes. The quiet presence of others working nearby. And then, just as gently, their attention returns to the task. Because the task is always there. Waiting. Unchanging. And in a way, there is something calming about that. There are no sudden surprises. No unexpected turns. The day is known before it fully unfolds. And so, the child continues. Step by step. Movement by movement. Until slowly, almost without noticing, the light begins to soften again. The afternoon approaches. And with it, a different kind of quiet begins to settle in. The afternoon arrives without a clear beginning. There is no single moment when morning becomes something else. It happens slowly, almost unnoticed, like a shadow stretching a little farther across the ground. The light softens just slightly, and the air feels heavier, as if the day itself is growing tired. Children feel this change in quiet ways. Their movements become a little slower. Not by choice, but naturally, as the hours settle into their bodies. Arms that have been working since early morning begin to feel heavier. Feet that have walked the same paths again and again carry a gentle weight. Still, the rhythm continues. It does not break. Inside workshops, the sounds remain steady. The same small noises repeat, soft and constant, filling the space in a way that feels almost comforting. There is no need for change. No expectation that something new should happen. A boy might pause for just a moment, his hand resting against the edge of a wooden table. His fingers are marked with fine dust, pale against his skin. He does not look at them for long. There is no reason to. They simply show what the day has already been. And then, gently, he begins again. Across the room, another child adjusts a piece of fabric. The thread moves carefully through cloth, each stitch placed with quiet attention. The pattern is simple, repeated many times, until it becomes almost automatic. There is a calm in repetition. A soft, steady calm that settles into the mind when the same motion is done again and again. Thoughts grow quieter. The world becomes smaller, focused only on what is directly in front of them. And in that small space, time passes almost without notice. Outside, the streets carry a different feeling now. The earlier energy has softened. The movements are still there, but they are less sharp, less hurried. People continue their tasks, but there is a quiet awareness that the day is slowly moving toward its end. Children walking through these streets do not speak much. Their attention stays forward. Their steps remain steady. Even when they pass others, there is little exchange. Just a brief glance, a small shift in movement, and then they continue on. There is no need for conversation. The day is already full. In homes, some children remain indoors, their tasks shifting slightly as the hours pass. Small chores begin to take shape again. Surfaces are wiped. Items are put back into place. Water is carried, carefully, without spilling. Each movement is done with care. Not because someone is always watching, but because the habit has already formed. The understanding of how things should be done lives quietly within them. Mistakes are rare, but when they happen, they are corrected quickly. There is no long pause, no deep reflection. Just a simple adjustment, and the work continues. In larger houses, lessons begin to wind down. Books are closed slowly. Pages are smoothed with gentle hands. The voices of teachers grow softer, their instructions fewer. The room itself seems to relax, as if it too has been holding its breath. A child might sit still for a moment longer than usual. Not because they are told to, but because their body asks for it. Their eyes may drift toward the window, watching the light as it changes shape across the glass. Outside, trees move slightly in the breeze. Their leaves shift quietly, creating a soft, distant sound. It is not loud enough to interrupt anything. It simply exists, adding to the calm. For a brief moment, there is nothing required. No task. No instruction. Just stillness. But it does not last long. Soon, the next part of the day begins to take shape. Evening is approaching. Back in the working parts of the city, the change is more subtle. There are no clear endings here. No signal that the work is finished. Instead, it slows gradually, like a steady stream becoming softer as it moves. A child's hands may begin to rest more often. Not stopping completely, but pausing between movements. The body begins to ask for rest in quiet ways. A slight shift in posture. A deeper breath. A moment where the eyes close just a little longer than before. And still, the expectation remains. The work continues until it is done. Not until the child is tired. Not until the light fades completely. But until the task reaches its natural end. And so, they continue. Without complaint. Without question. Because this is what the day has always required. There is something gentle in that acceptance. Not because the life is easy. But because it is understood. Deeply. Completely. As the sun lowers, the light becomes warmer. It stretches across walls and ground, creating long, soft shadows that move slowly as the minutes pass. The color of everything changes slightly, touched by a quiet golden tone. Children notice this, though they may not think about it. They feel it more than they see it. It signals something. Not an end, but a shift. The day is beginning to release its hold. In homes, small preparations begin. Simple meals are made, often with the same ingredients as before. There is little variety, but there is consistency. A quiet comfort in knowing what will be placed on the table. The smell of food, though plain, fills the air. It drifts through rooms, soft and familiar. Children gather, slowly. Not all at once. Not with noise or excitement. But gradually, as their tasks come to a close. They take their places without being asked, their movements guided by habit more than instruction. The meal is eaten quietly. There is no rush, but there is no lingering either. It is another part of the day, another step in a pattern that continues without change. Some words may be spoken. Soft, simple words. But often, silence remains. And it is not uncomfortable. It is full. Full of everything the day has already been. After the meal, the light continues to fade. The sky outside shifts into deeper tones. The soft gold becomes pale, then dim, then slowly disappears. Shadows blend together until they are no longer separate shapes. Inside, small lights may be lit. Candles. Lamps. Their glow is gentle, never harsh. It flickers slightly, creating a quiet movement of light along the walls. Children feel the weight of the day now. More clearly than before. Their bodies grow heavier. Their movements slower. The steady rhythm that carried them through the hours begins to soften, preparing to come to rest. There may still be small tasks. Things to tidy. Items to prepare for the next morning. But these are done slowly, without urgency. The end of the day is near, and everything seems to know it. Soon, there will be rest. Not long. Not deep for everyone. But enough. Enough to begin again. And so, as evening settles fully, the world grows quieter once more. The same stillness that was present in the early morning begins to return. Soft. Gentle. Unbroken. And within that stillness, children move closer to sleep, carrying with them the quiet understanding of a day that asked much, and gave little reason to question. Evening settles fully now. The last traces of daylight fade gently from the sky, leaving behind a soft, dim blue that slowly deepens into night. The streets grow quieter, though not completely silent. There are still distant sounds, a cart rolling somewhere far away, a door closing, footsteps passing and then fading. Inside the homes, the world becomes smaller. The glow of candlelight or a small lamp creates a quiet circle of warmth. Shadows gather in the corners, soft and still. The air feels calmer now, as if the long day has finally loosened its grip. Children move more slowly. Their energy has softened. Their bodies no longer hold the steady rhythm of work. Instead, there is a gentle heaviness in every movement. A quiet pull toward rest. Clothes are adjusted, sometimes changed, sometimes not. There is no strict ritual for comfort. Only what is necessary. Only what can be done with the time and resources available. A child may sit for a moment. Just sit. Not doing anything in particular. Not thinking deeply. Simply allowing the stillness to settle around them. Their hands rest in their lap. Their shoulders lower slightly. Their breathing becomes slower. These moments are small, but they matter. They are not planned. They are not spoken about. But they come naturally, like a soft pause at the end of a long sentence. In some homes, quiet voices continue. Parents speak softly about the day, about tomorrow, about things that need to be done. The words are calm, steady, and often repeated from one evening to the next. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels new. Children listen, even when they do not fully understand. They absorb the rhythm of the voices more than the meaning of the words. The tone becomes familiar, reassuring in its consistency. In wealthier homes, the evening may carry a slightly different shape. There may be books read aloud in soft tones. The gentle turning of pages. The quiet sound of a voice moving steadily through a story. Children sit nearby, listening, their eyes growing heavier with each passing minute. The room feels safe, ordered, still. But even here, the structure remains. Bedtime comes at its expected hour. Not early. Not late. Simply when it always has. And the children rise when they are told, without hesitation, without question. Because the pattern of the day continues, even into the night. In smaller homes, sleep arrives more gradually. There is less separation between the end of the day and the beginning of rest. Beds are simple. Sometimes shared. Sometimes little more than a narrow space with a thin covering. Children lie down quietly. There is no long preparation. No extended routine. Just the natural shift from movement to stillness. The body knows what to do. Eyes close slowly. Breathing deepens. The sounds of the room soften further. A faint crackle from the last of the fire. The quiet movement of someone nearby. The distant hum of the world outside, now much quieter than before. And within this calm, sleep begins to take hold. Not all at once. But gently. A slow drifting. A soft release. For many children, the day has been long enough that sleep comes easily. Their minds do not wander far. Their thoughts do not stretch into questions or possibilities. They simply settle, as their bodies ask them to. And there is a kind of peace in that. A quiet, simple peace. Not because the day was easy. But because it was known. Because it followed a shape that required no guessing. No uncertainty. Only participation. And now, that participation comes to rest. As the night deepens, the world grows even more still. The streets outside empty further. The last movements fade away. Windows darken one by one, until only a few faint lights remain. Inside, children sleep. Their breathing soft and even. Their bodies still. Their hands relaxed after a day of steady work. There is no dreaming of distant futures for many of them. No long thoughts about what might come next. Instead, there is a simple, quiet rest. A pause between one day and the next. And somewhere in that stillness, something becomes clear. This life, with all its demands, all its repetition, all its quiet expectations, is not something these children stand outside of. It is something they are already inside. Completely. From the moment they wake, to the moment they sleep. There is no sharp line between childhood and responsibility. They exist together. Blended. Seamless. And because of that, there is very little to question. Very little to resist. Not because the children are unable to think or feel otherwise. But because the world around them has always been this way. It has always moved with this rhythm. Always asked for this kind of effort. Always returned this kind of quiet. And so, acceptance grows naturally. Like something that does not need to be planted. It simply appears. Gently. Slowly. Without force. As the hours pass, the night becomes deeper. Colder. The air outside sharpens slightly, brushing against walls and windows, slipping quietly through any small opening it can find. Inside, the warmth fades a little, but not enough to wake those who sleep. Everything remains calm. Everything remains still. And in that stillness, time continues its slow movement forward. Preparing the world for another day. Another morning. Another quiet beginning. And when that morning comes, the pattern will begin again. Without surprise. Without hesitation. Just as it always has. The night passes quietly. There are no sudden changes, no sharp interruptions. Time moves softly through the dark, almost unnoticed, as if the world itself is resting. The hours drift one into another, carrying with them a deep stillness that feels complete. And slowly, very slowly, the first signs of morning begin again. It starts in the faintest way. A slight shift in the darkness. A soft cooling of the air just before dawn. Then, far in the distance, the smallest hint of light begins to return. Inside the homes, children are still asleep. Their rest is not always deep, but it is enough. Enough to quiet the body. Enough to prepare for what will come next. There is no need for long sleep, no expectation of comfort beyond what is necessary. The body has learned to take what it is given. And so it does. As the light grows, waking comes gently. There is no sudden movement. No loud call. Just a gradual return to awareness. Eyes open slowly. Breathing shifts. The stillness of sleep fades, replaced by the quiet understanding that the day is beginning again. For a brief moment, there is calm. A soft space between rest and motion. But it does not last long. Soon, the first movements begin. A child sits up, slowly. The blanket is moved aside. The air feels cool against the skin. It is familiar. Expected. There is no reaction to it beyond a quiet acceptance. Around them, others begin to wake as well. The room fills with small, careful sounds. Fabric shifting. Feet touching the floor. A faint creak from the wooden boards beneath them. Each sound is soft, blending into the stillness rather than breaking it. There is no need for instruction. Each child knows what comes next. The day does not need to be explained. It has already been lived, many times before. Clothing is put on in the same quiet way as yesterday. Buttons fastened. Fabric smoothed. Small adjustments made without thought. Everything follows a pattern. And that pattern carries them forward. Downstairs, the air is cold again. The fire may not yet be fully lit. Or it may have burned low during the night, leaving only faint warmth behind. A new flame begins slowly, its light flickering gently against the walls. Breakfast comes again. Simple. Unchanging. A small portion, eaten without pause. There is no delay, no lingering. The body takes what it needs, and then the moment passes. Children do not ask for more. Not because they never feel hunger, but because hunger has become something quiet. Something that sits in the background, no longer demanding attention in the same way. And so, the day begins once more. Outside, the streets awaken just as they did before. The same slow build of sound. The same steady increase in movement. Nothing feels new. Nothing feels different. And yet, everything continues. Children step out into the morning air. Their breath visible for a moment in the coolness. Their steps steady, their eyes forward. There is no hesitation. No pause to consider another path. Because there is no other path. Only the one they already know. And so they follow it. Some return to the same workshops. The same rooms. The same tasks waiting quietly where they were left. Nothing has changed. The tools are in the same place. The work remains unfinished, ready to continue. And without a word, without a signal, it begins again. Hands move. Bodies adjust. The rhythm returns. It feels familiar almost immediately. As if the pause of sleep was only a brief interruption, not a true ending. A boy resumes sanding, the motion already known to his muscles. A girl continues her stitching, the needle passing through cloth with the same steady pace as the day before. There is no learning curve. No adjustment. Just continuation. In homes, children begin their morning tasks once more. Cleaning. Carrying. Watching. Each movement flowing into the next, without thought, without resistance. In larger houses, lessons begin again. Books open to familiar pages. Voices repeat familiar words. The structure returns as if it never left. And through it all, there is something deeply consistent. A quiet thread that connects each moment to the next. It is not spoken. It is not written. But it is always there. Expectation. Not heavy. Not forceful. Just constant. Children grow within this constant expectation. It shapes their movements. Their thoughts. Their understanding of the world. And because it is always present, it does not feel unusual. It feels normal. Natural. As natural as the rising of the sun. As natural as the passing of the hours. And so, there is very little space for questioning. Not because questions are forbidden, but because they do not often appear. The mind follows the pattern it has been given. It does not wander far beyond it. And in that way, acceptance becomes quiet and complete. The morning grows brighter. The same light fills the same spaces. The same sounds return. Everything continues as it always has. And the children move within it, gently and steadily, carrying forward a life that asks for much, yet rarely explains itself. Still, they do not stop. They do not step back. They simply continue. Because continuing is what they have learned. And in that learning, there is a kind of calm. A steady, unbroken calm, that carries them through each day, one after another, without question. The morning settles once again into its familiar shape. By now, the early chill has softened just a little. The air is still cool, but no longer sharp. The light has grown steadier, spreading evenly across rooftops, across narrow streets, across the quiet interiors where so many small movements continue without pause. Children are already deep into their day. There is no clear beginning anymore. The moment when morning starts fades quickly, replaced by a long stretch of steady activity. The rhythm takes over completely, carrying each task forward into the next. Inside the workshops, the air feels unchanged. It holds the same quiet weight, the same stillness that lingers between the sounds of work. Dust floats gently where light touches it, moving slowly, almost lazily, as if time itself has slowed within the room. A child leans slightly over their work. Not out of strain, but out of habit. The body adjusts to what it must do, shaping itself around the task in a way that feels natural. Hands continue their careful motions, guided less by thought now and more by memory. There is comfort in this kind of repetition. The mind does not need to reach far. It does not need to solve anything new. It simply follows the path it already knows, again and again, with quiet certainty. Nearby, another child shifts their weight from one foot to the other. It is a small movement, barely noticeable. But it speaks of the hours that have already passed. The body asks for change in subtle ways, and those small adjustments are enough to continue. No one speaks about tiredness. It exists, but it does not need to be named. Outside, the streets continue their steady life. Vendors move along familiar paths, doors open and close. Footsteps pass one another without interruption. The sound of the city is not loud, but constant. A low, steady hum that never fully disappears. Children moving through these streets remain focused. Their tasks are simple, but they carry them with care. A small item held tightly. A message remembered clearly. A direction followed without hesitation. There is no room for distraction. Not because distractions do not exist, but because attention has already been shaped to stay where it is needed. In homes, the same quiet patterns continue. A child sweeps a floor, the motion slow and even. Another arranges small items, placing them exactly where they belong. These tasks are not rushed. There is no need to finish quickly. Only to finish properly. And so, each movement is given its time. In larger homes, the lessons deepen slightly. The same subjects return, but with small additions. A new word. A longer sentence. A slightly more difficult problem. Progress happens in quiet steps, almost unnoticed from one day to the next. A child pauses over a page. Their eyes move slowly across the lines. Their lips form the words in a soft whisper, repeating until the sound feels right. There is no pressure to hurry. Only a steady encouragement to continue. And so they do. Across all these spaces, there is something shared. A sense that the day is not something to be shaped, but something to move through. Children do not ask how long it will last. They do not measure the hours in the way we might expect. Instead, they feel the day through its weight. Through the slow build of effort. Through the quiet signals of the body. A slight ache in the hands. A gentle heaviness in the legs. A moment where the eyes need to close, just for a second. These are the markers of time. And they come naturally. As the sun continues its slow path across the sky, the light begins to shift again. It is still bright, but softer now. Less direct. The shadows grow longer, stretching gently across the ground, across the walls, across the spaces where children continue their work. There is no announcement of this change. No signal. But it is felt. The day is moving forward. Steadily. Calmly. Unstoppably. In the workshops, a child may pause for just a moment longer than before. Their hand rests on the surface of their work. Their shoulders lower slightly. Their breath deepens. It is not a break. Not fully. Just a small space within the ongoing rhythm. And then, as naturally as the pause arrived, it passes. The movement begins again. Because the work remains. And the day continues. Outside, the air feels a little warmer now. Not by much, but enough to soften the edges of the morning's chill. The world feels slightly more open, though still contained within its familiar boundaries. Children walking through this space carry the same quiet focus. They do not look far ahead. They do not look far behind. Their attention stays close, centered on what must be done. And this focus brings a kind of calm. A simple, steady calm that does not ask for anything more than what is already present. In this way, the day unfolds without resistance. Without question. Not because the children are without thought, but because their thoughts move along the same gentle path as their actions. There is alignment between what is expected, and what is done. And within that alignment, there is ease. Not comfort, exactly. But something close to it. Something quiet. Something steady. As the afternoon begins to approach once more, the pattern continues just as it did before. Unchanged. Unbroken. And the children remain within it, moving gently from one moment to the next, carrying forward a life that has never asked them to step outside its quiet, steady flow. The day leans gently into the afternoon once more. There is no clear line that marks the change. It arrives slowly, carried in the soft shift of light and the quiet deepening of shadows. The brightness of morning becomes warmer, softer, and the air begins to hold a different stillness. Children feel it without needing to name it. Their bodies, already shaped by the steady rhythm of the day, begin to move with a quieter weight. Not slower in purpose, but softer in energy. Each motion remains careful, practiced, and familiar. Inside the workshops, the sounds continue. The same gentle repetition fills the space. Tools brushing against surfaces. Cloth moving through fingers. Small movements, again and again, forming a quiet pattern that does not break. A child adjusts their position slightly. Perhaps leaning a little to one side, easing the weight from tired feet. The change is small, almost invisible, but it allows the work to continue. These small adjustments are part of the rhythm too. They are understood without thought. There is no complaint. No pause to question how long the day has been. Only the continuation of what has already begun. In the streets, the world carries a softer tone now. The earlier movement has settled. People still pass, still work, still follow their paths, but there is less urgency. The day has reached a point where everything feels known. Children walking through these streets remain steady. Their steps are measured, their attention held close. They carry what they must, deliver what is needed, and return along the same familiar routes. Nothing feels uncertain. Nothing feels new. And in that sameness, there is a quiet kind of stability. In homes, the afternoon tasks continue gently. A child might kneel near the floor, finishing a small chore that began earlier. The motion is slow and even, guided by habit rather than instruction. Another child might sit near a window, mending something simple, their hands moving with quiet precision. The light near the window is soft now. It touches the fabric, the hands, the small movements, creating a calm and steady scene that feels almost unchanged from the day before, and the day before that. In larger homes, lessons begin to ease again. Voices grow softer. Instructions fewer. Books remain open, but the pace slows. A child may read the same line more than once, not out of confusion, but out of quiet fatigue. Their eyes linger on the page, their thoughts moving more gently now. The teacher does not rush them. There is no need. The day itself is already guiding everything toward its natural end. Across all these spaces, something begins to settle. Not fully, not yet, but slowly. The long stretch of effort is beginning to soften. The body recognizes this before the mind does. A slight release in the shoulders. A deeper breath. A moment where the hands rest just a little longer before beginning again. These are the quiet signs. The signs that the day is moving toward its closing. And still, the work continues. Because the work always continues until it is done. Children do not stop because they are tired. They do not step away because the light is changing. They continue because that is what the day asks of them. And so they move forward. Gently. Steadily. Without resistance. Outside, the sky begins its slow transformation. The pale blue deepens slightly, touched with warmer tones. The sun lowers, though it does so quietly, without drawing attention to itself. Shadows stretch farther, blending into one another until the ground becomes a soft pattern of light and dark. Children notice this in small ways. A glance upward. A shift in the way the light falls across their path. But they do not stop to watch. The moment passes, and their attention returns to what is in front of them. Because what is in front of them is always what matters most. In this world, there is little space for looking far ahead. Little room for imagining something different. The day is enough. The task is enough. And within that, life continues. As the afternoon deepens, a quiet calm begins to spread. Not the stillness of night, but something close to it. A soft quiet that rests beneath the ongoing movement, like a gentle layer beneath everything else. Children feel it, even if they do not think about it. It brings a slight ease to their movements. A subtle slowing, not of pace, but of effort. The body begins to prepare for rest, even while it continues to work. And so, the hours pass. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. Always steadily. A child may pause again, their hands resting for a brief moment. Their eyes close softly, just for a second. And in that second, there is nothing. No task. No expectation. Only a small, quiet stillness. Then it fades. And the movement returns. Because the day is not yet finished. But it is nearing its end. And that quiet understanding begins to settle, gently, across everything. The afternoon begins to fade. It happens slowly, almost too gently to notice at first. The warmth in the light softens, and the long shadows stretch even farther across the ground. The steady rhythm of the day continues, but something beneath it has begun to change. There is a quiet sense of closing. Not sudden. Not announced. Just a soft movement toward stillness. Children feel it in their bodies before they see it around them. Their arms grow heavier, though they still move. Their steps remain steady, but there is a deeper weight behind each one now. The hours of the day have settled fully into them, and the effort they have given lingers quietly in their muscles. Inside the workshops, the air seems thicker. Not because anything has changed, but because the day has filled it with time. The same space, the same tools, the same work, yet everything feels slightly slower now, as if the room itself is ready to rest. A child's hands continue their task. But there are longer pauses between movements. A brief stillness. A small breath. Then the motion begins again. No one calls attention to it. No one needs to. It is understood. Across the room, another child shifts their position, easing the weight from tired legs. Their posture changes just slightly, enough to continue without stopping. These small adjustments have become part of the day, as natural as the work itself. Outside, the streets carry a softer sound. The earlier movement has quieted. There are still footsteps, still voices, still the gentle hum of the city, but everything feels more distant now. As if the world is slowly stepping back from its own activity. Children walking through these streets keep their steady pace. They do not hurry, but they do not slow too much either. Their path remains clear. Their purpose remains unchanged. A small bundle is carried carefully. A simple task is completed. And then, just as quietly, another begins. There is no sense of finishing everything at once. Only the gradual winding down of the day. In homes, the same quiet shift takes place. Tasks become fewer. Movements slower. The space begins to feel calmer, as if it is preparing itself for the quiet of evening. A child might sit near a window again. The light there is softer now, touching everything with a gentle glow. Dust moves slowly in the air, visible for just a moment before fading again. The outside world looks different in this light, less defined, more distant. For a brief moment, the child may simply look. Not thinking. Not wondering. Just seeing. And then, as always, the moment passes. The task returns. Because the day has not fully ended. In larger homes, lessons come to a close. Books are closed carefully, their pages smoothed one last time. The teacher's voice fades into silence, replaced by the soft sounds of movement as the room begins to empty. Children stand slowly. Their bodies feel the long hours behind them. Their steps are quiet as they leave the room, carrying with them the steady effort of the day. There is no rush to the next moment. Everything moves gently. Even the end of work arrives without urgency. Back in the workshops, the final tasks begin to take shape. Small things are finished. Tools are set aside. Surfaces are cleared. Nothing dramatic marks the end. Just a series of quiet actions that slowly bring the work to a pause. A child places something down with care. Their hands rest for a moment longer than before. Their shoulders lower. And in that small stillness, the day's effort settles fully into them. The work is done. Not in a loud or celebratory way, but in a quiet, complete way. And that is enough. Outside, the sky deepens into warmer tones. Soft gold, fading slowly into pale orange, then into something dimmer still. The light no longer fills the streets in the same way. It lingers only at the edges now, slipping away with each passing moment. Children begin to return home. Their steps are slower now, not from hesitation, but from the natural weight of the day. They follow familiar paths, moving through the same streets, past the same buildings, without needing to think about where they are going. Their bodies remember. Their routines guide them. And so they arrive, one by one, into the quiet spaces where evening waits. Inside, the air feels different again. Softer. Calmer. The day's activity has left its mark, but it no longer fills the room. Instead, there is a gentle stillness, broken only by small movements as the final tasks of the day begin. Food is prepared. Simple, as always. The smell rises slowly, filling the space with something warm and familiar. It is not rich, not complex, but it carries a quiet comfort. Children gather again. Not quickly. Not all at once. But gradually, as each one completes what they must. They take their places without being told. Their movements guided by habit. The meal is eaten in the same calm way. No rush. No delay. Just the steady act of eating, of restoring a small part of the energy that has been given throughout the day. There may be a few words. Soft. Simple. But often, there is silence. And in that silence, there is no emptiness. Only rest. After the meal, the light fades further. The room grows dim, and small lights are brought to life. Their glow is gentle, flickering softly, creating a quiet dance of light along the walls. Children feel the day settling into them now. Fully. Completely. Their movements slow even more. Their voices, if they speak, are softer. Everything begins to draw inward. Toward rest. Toward stillness. And once again, the quiet end of the day begins to take shape, just as it has so many times before. The evening deepens gently. The last light of day slips away almost unnoticed, leaving behind a quiet dimness that settles into every corner. The glow from candles and small lamps becomes more important now, casting soft, flickering light that moves slowly across walls and floors. Inside the homes, everything feels smaller, more contained. The wide stretch of the day has come to an end, and now the world gathers itself into a quiet, steady calm. Children move through these final moments without hurry. Their bodies no longer carry the steady rhythm of work. Instead, there is a softness in the way they walk, in the way they sit, in the way they breathe. The long hours have gently worn away any extra energy, leaving only what is needed to finish the day. A child may sit close to the faint warmth of a fire. The heat is not strong, but it is enough. Enough to ease the chill that lingers in the air. Their hands rest near the warmth, fingers slightly open, as if holding onto that small comfort for just a moment longer. There is no rush to move away. But there is also no delay when it is time. Everything follows its quiet pattern. In some homes, simple tasks continue. Clothes are folded. Small items are put into place. The room is prepared for the stillness of night. Each movement is slow and careful, not because there is time to spare, but because the body naturally moves that way now. Tired, but steady. In wealthier homes, the evening may carry a softer form of activity. A book opened again. A quiet voice reading slowly, the words flowing in a calm and even tone. Children sit nearby, listening, their eyes heavy, their thoughts drifting gently between the sound of the voice and the quiet pull of sleep. The story itself is not always followed. It does not need to be. The rhythm of the voice is enough. It fills the space in a way that feels safe, predictable, steady. And slowly, the need for movement fades. Children begin to prepare for rest. Not with long routines or careful rituals, but with simple actions that have been repeated many times before. A blanket adjusted. Shoes set aside. A small space made ready. There is no conversation about the next day. No long reflection on the one that has passed. The day exists only as something that has been lived. And now, it is finished. A child lies down. The surface beneath them is simple, often firm, sometimes shared with others. There is little softness, little comfort beyond what is necessary. But the body does not resist it. It accepts it. Because it has always been this way. Because there is nothing else to expect. The eyes begin to close. Slowly. Gently. The sounds of the room fade into the background. The faint crackle of a fire, the soft movement of someone nearby, the distant echo of the outside world, all of it becomes quieter, softer, less important. Breathing deepens. The body begins to release the day. Not all at once, but in stages. A slight loosening of the hands. A deeper settling of the shoulders. A gentle sinking into stillness. And then, sleep begins. It does not arrive suddenly. It comes slowly, like a quiet tide rising. Thoughts fade without being followed. The mind does not wander far. There is no need. The day has already taken what it needed. And now, there is only rest. Across the city, the same quiet pattern unfolds. In many homes, many rooms, many small spaces, children drift into sleep in this same gentle way. Each one carrying the quiet weight of their day. Each one releasing it, slowly, into the stillness of night. Outside, the streets grow nearly silent. The last footsteps fade. The final doors close. The city rests, as much as it ever does. And within that rest, there is a deep calm. Not empty. Not still in a lifeless way. But full of quiet presence. Full of the soft continuation of time. Hours pass. Unnoticed. Unmarked. The night holds everything gently. Protecting the stillness. Allowing the world to pause. And as it does, something remains clear. This life, with its steady demands, its quiet repetition, its unspoken expectations, has become something the children do not stand apart from. They do not look at it from a distance. They do not measure it against something else. They live within it completely. And because of that, there is no sharp edge to it. No constant questioning. No sense that something is missing. Only the quiet understanding that this is how things are. And so, they rest. Deeply. Quietly. Without resistance. Until, slowly, the night begins to pass once more. And somewhere beyond the darkness, the faintest hint of another morning begins to form. The night does not end suddenly. It loosens slowly, like a long breath released without sound. Darkness remains for a while, but it begins to feel lighter at its edges. Not yet morning, but no longer deep night either. Everything is still. The city rests in a quiet that feels complete, as if even time itself has softened its movement. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their bodies lie still, settled into simple spaces that have become familiar through repetition. There is no awareness of hours passing. No sense of waiting. Only rest, steady and uninterrupted. The fire, if it still burns, has lowered to faint embers. Its glow is weak now, barely touching the room. Shadows are soft and unmoving. The air is cool, but not sharp. Everything feels held in place, as if the world is paused for just a little longer. And then, slowly, change returns. Not loudly. Not suddenly. Just a gradual lifting of darkness. A faint light begins to gather beyond the windows. It is almost invisible at first, blending into the remaining night. But it grows gently, patiently, without hurry. The first sign of a new day. Inside, there is still sleep. But even sleep begins to shift. A child turns slightly, their breathing changing just a little. Not waking yet, but moving closer to it. The body senses the return of morning before the mind does. And one by one, this quiet transition spreads. Across rooms. Across homes. Across the sleeping city. The new day is approaching, as it always does. There is no interruption to the pattern. No break in its rhythm. Only continuation. The same life, returning again. The same movements waiting to begin. The same expectations already in place, even before eyes open. And in this return, there is something steady. Something deeply familiar. Not exciting. Not uncertain. Just known. The kind of known that does not need to be explained. As the light strengthens slightly, the world begins to take shape again. Roofs, walls, streets all slowly becoming visible once more. The outlines of buildings appear first, then details, then color returning in soft layers. The city does not wake all at once. It never does. It unfolds. Quietly. Gradually. Like it always has. Inside, children begin to wake again. Slowly. Naturally. Without rush. The same familiar process returns. Eyes opening. Blankets shifting. Small movements that mark the transition from sleep to waking. There is no surprise in it. Only acceptance. Because this moment has been lived before. Many times. And will be lived again. Clothing is reached for. Simple routines begin. The quiet preparation for another day takes shape with practiced ease. There is no need to think deeply about it. The body already knows what to do. Outside, the first sounds of morning return. A door opening. A distant voice. A soft movement in the street. The city begins again. And the children move with it. Not behind it. Not ahead of it. But within it. Just as before. Just as always. The cycle does not change. It continues. And in that continuation, there is a deep and steady calm. A rhythm that holds everything together. Morning becomes day. Day becomes evening. Evening becomes night. And night returns again to morning. Each part flowing gently into the next, without resistance. Without interruption. And within this endless pattern, the lives of these children unfold quietly. Step by step. Day by day. In a world that asks much of them, and yet feels completely known. And so, once again, the morning settles in. Softly. Steadily. Like it always has. Like it always will. And the day begins again. Morning arrives again in its quiet, familiar way. Not as something new, but as something returning. The same soft light gathers at the edges of the sky, slowly filling the spaces between rooftops, windows, and narrow streets. It moves gently, without urgency, as if it has nowhere else to be. Inside the homes, children are already beginning to wake. There is no sharp moment of awareness. No sudden change. Only a gradual shift, like drifting from one calm place into another. Sleep loosens its hold slowly, and the body begins to remember the shape of the day ahead. A small movement. A slight turn. A quiet breath that deepens just a little. And then stillness gives way to morning. The room feels cooler now. The air carries the faint touch of early light, soft and steady. Shadows are still present, but they are thinner, less heavy than before. Everything feels gently renewed, though nothing has truly changed. Children sit up slowly. Their movements are unhurried, almost careful, as if the morning itself should not be disturbed. The habits of the day return without effort. There is no need to recall them. They are already there. Waiting. Familiar. Always ready. Clothing is adjusted in the same simple way. Fabric folded back into place. Small routines repeated without thought. There is comfort in this repetition. Not comfort in ease, but in knowing. In not having to decide. In not having to wonder what comes next. Because what comes next is always the same. Downstairs, the early warmth of a fire begins again. Soft sparks, gentle flames, a quiet glow forming in the dim morning air. It does not rush to grow. It builds slowly, just like everything else in this world. Breakfast follows. Simple. Unchanging. A small portion of food, prepared the same way it has always been. There is no expectation of variety. No anticipation of something different. Only the steady acceptance of what is provided. Children eat without pause. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. As if the act itself is part of the rhythm that carries the day forward. Outside, the city begins its familiar awakening. The same sounds return. The same movements unfold. Doors opening. Footsteps passing. The low, steady presence of daily life filling the streets once more. And children step into it. Again. They walk the same paths. Pass the same corners. Move toward the same places they have always gone. Work begins without announcement. Lessons resume without interruption. Tasks continue without question. Everything flows forward as it always has. And within that flow, there is no sharp edge. No moment of resistance. Only movement. Only continuation. The world does not ask them to pause and consider. It simply moves, and they move with it. And so the day settles into its rhythm once more. Quiet. Steady. Predictable. The kind of predictability that shapes thought without needing words. That becomes part of breathing. Part of being. Children grow within this rhythm. Not apart from it. Not against it. But inside it, fully and completely. Each day blending into the next. Each morning returning like a familiar tide. And in that return, there is a deep stillness. Not emptiness. But fullness without disruption. A life that does not break into pieces, but continues as one long, gentle flow. Morning becomes afternoon. Afternoon becomes evening. And evening will become night again. As it always does. As it always has. And the children, once more, move through it all. Quietly. Steadily. Without needing to question the shape of the world they already know. And somewhere in that steady motion, the day continues forward. Softly. Endlessly. Like a quiet breath that never fully ends. The afternoon settles in again, as if it was always meant to be there. The light grows softer, not fading yet, but changing its tone. It becomes warmer in color, less direct, touching walls and streets in a way that feels slower, almost gentle. Shadows lengthen once more, stretching quietly across familiar ground. The city continues its steady movement. Nothing sudden happens here. Nothing breaks the rhythm. Everything unfolds the way it always has, as if the world itself prefers repetition over change. Children remain within that rhythm. Their work continues in the same quiet pattern. Their lessons continue in the same steady voice. Their small tasks continue in the same practiced motions. There is no need to think about what comes next, because it is already there, waiting without interruption. Inside the workshops, the air feels warm now. Not from heat alone, but from hours already past. The space carries the presence of the day within it. The soft sound of movement, the faint marks of effort, the quiet persistence of hands repeating what they have done many times before. A child pauses briefly. Not stopping. Just resting within the motion. A small break between movements that lasts only a moment before continuing again. No one marks the pause. No one needs to. It belongs to the rhythm of the work itself. Outside, the streets carry the same steady life. The movement of people is still there, but softened. Less hurried than earlier. The day has already done much of its work, and now it moves toward completion rather than beginning. Children walking through these streets remain focused. Their steps are familiar with the ground beneath them. Their direction is already known. Their purpose does not shift. They move forward with quiet certainty, carrying out what is expected without needing to name it. In homes, the afternoon takes on a calmer tone. Small chores continue, but more slowly now. Movements are careful, unhurried. The energy of earlier hours has softened into something quieter. A child might sit for a moment longer than before. Not because they are told to rest, but because their body naturally asks for it. The world allows this pause without resistance. Then, just as gently, the motion resumes. In larger homes, the lessons begin to wind down again. The voices of instruction grow softer. The pages of books turn more slowly. The structure of learning does not disappear, but it loosens slightly, preparing for the end of the day. A child listens, their attention drifting between the words and the quiet feeling of tiredness that begins to settle in. There is no urgency to finish quickly. Only the steady continuation of what has already begun. And so the hours pass. Slowly. Evenly. Without interruption. The afternoon becomes something like a long, quiet passage. A space between the beginning of the day and its end. Not empty, but filled with steady, familiar movement. And within that movement, children continue. Not resisting. Not questioning. Simply following the shape of the day as it unfolds around them. The sun lowers slightly again. Its position shifting almost imperceptibly at first. The light changes in small degrees, becoming softer, more angled, less direct. The world begins to feel like it is moving toward evening once more. And that feeling is understood without being spoken. It is recognized in the body. In the slowing of movement. In the quiet readiness for what always comes next. A child gathers their things slowly. Another finishes a final task. Another stands quietly for a moment, simply waiting for the next instruction or the natural close of work. Everything moves toward completion. Not suddenly, but steadily. Like a door closing gently rather than shutting. And as the day continues to move forward, there is a quiet acceptance in all of it. Not because the life is simple. Not because it is easy. But because it is known. And what is known becomes part of the self. Part of the rhythm of being. So the children continue. Through the afternoon light. Toward the soft edge of evening. Step by step. Moment by moment. Carrying the day forward, just as they always have. Evening begins to arrive in its quiet, unspoken way. It does not come all at once. It does not announce itself. Instead, it seeps gently into the world, changing the light, softening the air, and slowing the rhythm of movement just a little more with every passing moment. The sun lowers further now. Its light becomes stretched and thin, touching the tops of buildings and the edges of streets with a warm, fading glow. Colors begin to lose their sharpness, blending into softer tones, as if the world is slowly preparing to rest. Inside the homes, children return from the final parts of their day. Their steps are slower than before, not from confusion or uncertainty, but from the natural weight of the hours they have already carried. The day has moved through them fully now, leaving its quiet imprint in their bodies. There is no rush to enter. No hesitation either. Only the simple act of returning. A door opens. A space is entered. And the evening begins to settle around them. The air inside feels different now. Softer. Stiller. It carries the faint memory of the day's activity, but it no longer belongs to it. It is shifting into something else. Something quieter. Something closer to rest. Children move through familiar routines. Not with urgency, but with calm repetition. Small tasks are completed gently. Items are placed back where they belong. Hands move slowly, almost automatically, as if guided more by memory than thought. There is comfort in this repetition. Not excitement. Not change. But the steady return of what is known. In the kitchen or cooking space, simple meals are prepared once again. Nothing elaborate. Nothing different. The same kinds of food that have always been made. The same smells rising slowly into the air. Warm, plain, familiar. Children gather without being asked. Their movements are quiet, natural, expected. They take their places as they always do. And the meal is shared in the same calm way as before. There is little conversation. Not because words are forbidden, but because they are not needed. The day has already spoken enough. The body has already done enough. Now there is only stillness between small moments of eating. A soft pause. A quiet rhythm. And then it is done. Outside, the sky continues its slow transformation. The bright tones of the afternoon have faded almost completely now. In their place, a deeper, softer color spreads across the horizon. Warm at first, then gradually cooler as the light disappears. The first hints of night begin to form. Not sudden darkness, but a gentle dimming. A gradual closing. Inside, small lights are lit again. Their glow is soft and steady, flickering slightly as they settle into the evening air. Shadows return, but they are gentler now, less sharp, less defined. Everything feels closer. Smaller. More contained. Children feel this shift without needing to think about it. Their bodies begin to slow naturally. Movements become more deliberate, less frequent. The energy of the day has fully passed through them now, leaving only what is needed for the final hours before sleep. A child sits quietly for a moment. Not doing anything. Just being still. Their eyes rest softly on the space around them, but their attention is no longer fully engaged with it. It drifts gently, like a leaf settling onto calm water. There is no need to hold focus anymore. The day is nearly complete. In wealthier homes, evening reading or quiet conversation may continue for a little longer. The sound of a soft voice fills the room, steady and calm. Children listen, not with effort, but with ease, as their bodies naturally begin to drift toward rest. In simpler homes, silence is more present. A silence that is not empty, but full of quiet familiarity. The sound of small movements, of breathing, of the world slowly slowing down. And so, as evening deepens further, the final part of the day begins to take shape. The preparation for sleep. Not as a separate ritual, but as a natural continuation of everything that has come before. Clothing is adjusted. Spaces are settled. Bodies ease downward into stillness. And one by one, children begin to lie down again. Not with resistance. Not with hesitation. But with quiet acceptance. Because this moment is not new. It is known. It has been lived before. And will be lived again. The eyes close slowly. The sounds of the room fade gently. The weight of the day loosens its hold. And sleep arrives, not as an ending, but as a return to stillness. A stillness that feels complete. A stillness that carries them forward, until the next morning comes again. Softly. Gently. As it always does. Night settles in once more, not as a sudden arrival, but as a quiet deepening. The light outside has fully withdrawn now, leaving the world wrapped in a soft, even darkness. It is not heavy. It does not press down. It simply surrounds everything with a calm stillness, like a blanket laid gently over the city. Inside the homes, sleep has already begun to take hold. Children lie in the same simple positions they have learned through repetition. Their bodies are still, their breathing slow and even. The long day has loosened its hold completely now, leaving only rest behind. There is no struggle against sleep. No reaching for more time. Only the natural release that comes after hours of steady effort. The rooms are quiet. Not silent in a sharp way, but in a soft way. A way that feels full rather than empty. The faintest sounds remain breathing, the distant settling of wood, the occasional shift of fabric, but even these feel distant, as if they belong to another layer of the world. Outside, the streets are still. The city does not truly stop, but it softens until it feels almost paused. Movement becomes rare. Lights are few. The familiar rhythm of daily life has eased into something quieter, something slower. Time itself feels less noticeable here. It moves, but without urgency. Without weight. Inside, children drift deeper into sleep. Their minds no longer hold onto the shape of the day. The tasks, the lessons, the movements, all of it fades gently, like footprints slowly disappearing in soft ground. There is no need to carry it forward. The day is complete. And so it is released. In this quiet state, there is a kind of balance. Not peace in the sense of comfort alone, but peace in the sense of completion. Everything that was required has been done. Everything that needed to be moved through has been moved through. Nothing remains unfinished in this moment. And so the body rests fully. Even dreams, when they come, are soft and unhurried. They do not break the calm. They move within it gently, like slow currents beneath still water. Hours pass. Slowly. Evenly. Without distinction. The night does not mark them. It simply holds them. And within that holding, the world continues its quiet rhythm. Not forward in a visible way. But forward nonetheless. Because even in stillness, time does not stop. It simply softens. And eventually, as it always does, the edges of night begin to shift again. Not noticeably at first. Only a faint change in the air. A subtle easing of darkness. A quiet suggestion that something new is forming beyond it. But for now, the city remains asleep. Children remain at rest. And the world continues in its calm, steady pause. As if it knows that soon, it will begin again. Just as it always has. Softly. Naturally. Without interruption. And in that quiet continuity, there is nothing to fear. Nothing to question. Only the gentle turning of time, carrying everything forward, one breath at a time. The night begins to thin, almost imperceptibly. Not in a way that demands attention, but in a way that gently shifts the feeling of the world. Darkness is still present, still complete in many places, yet it no longer feels as deep as it once did. A faint change moves through the air. Something subtle. Something patient. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their rest is steady, uninterrupted. The long stillness of night has held them fully, and now continues to hold them as it slowly transitions toward morning. There is no awareness of this change within them. Only the body, resting and recovering in its quiet way. The city is still. Almost entirely still. And yet, beneath that stillness, something begins again. Not movement. Not sound. But readiness. A quiet preparation that exists even before waking. The world, in its own slow rhythm, begins to turn back toward light. Outside, the sky is no longer the deepest shade of night. It carries a softer tone now, a faint lifting at the edges where darkness and something lighter begin to meet. It is not morning yet. But it is no longer fully night. Inside, a child shifts slightly in sleep. A small movement. A natural adjustment of the body as it continues to rest. There is no awareness behind it. No thought. Only the quiet intelligence of a body that moves through cycles it has known countless times before. Sleep remains. But it begins to loosen, just as it always does at this hour. Not suddenly. Not completely. Just enough to signal that the long stretch of night is nearing its end. The rooms remain dim. Candles or lamps have long since faded. Only the faintest suggestion of light begins to return through small openings in the walls, through thin spaces where morning will soon arrive. Time feels suspended here. Neither fully night nor fully day. Just the gentle space between. And within that space, everything remains calm. The children continue to sleep. Their breathing steady. Their bodies still. Their minds drifting in quiet rest that asks for nothing and holds no urgency. There is no need for anything more in this moment. No expectation. No demand. Only continuation. The world outside slowly begins to shift again. Very gradually. Like a breath being drawn in somewhere far away. The darkness softens further, not disappearing, but thinning. The edges of shapes become slightly more defined. The horizon begins to suggest itself again, even before it is fully visible. And still, the city does not wake. It waits. Not consciously, but naturally. As it always does. Inside, sleep begins its slow retreat. Not ending. Just easing. A child's hand relaxes further. A breath deepens and then steadies again. Another small movement follows, almost nothing at all, but part of the quiet transition from rest toward awareness. This is not waking yet. Only the beginning of it. A slow return. A gentle unfolding. The kind that has happened every day before this one, and will happen again after it. The rhythm continues. Night giving way to something softer. Something lighter. Something that will soon become morning. And in this in-between space, everything remains calm. Everything remains still. And everything remains, quietly, exactly as it is meant to be. Until the next breath of the world, brings the day once more. The first true shape of morning begins to return. Not suddenly. Not with force. But in the slow, patient way that light always arrives after darkness. It spreads gently, almost cautiously at first, touching the edges of the sky and the quiet surfaces of the city below. The world begins to separate itself from the night. Not fully yet. Only in soft outlines. Inside the homes, sleep still holds most children. But it is no longer the same deep, uninterrupted rest of the middle night. It has shifted slightly, becoming lighter, more fragile, as if the body already knows it will soon be time to rise again. A child stirs. Just a small movement. A slight turn of the head, a loosening of stillness. The blanket shifts gently, and then the body settles again, not yet waking, but no longer fully deep in sleep either. This is the quiet threshold between rest and return. A space that exists every morning. Familiar. Unchanging. Outside, the light continues its slow arrival. It does not fill the sky all at once. It builds in layers. First a faint grayness, then a soft pale glow, then the suggestion of color returning where darkness once fully held the world. The city remains quiet. But it is a different kind of quiet now. Less like stillness. More like waiting. Inside, children begin to wake in small, scattered moments. Not together. Not in any rush. One here. One there. Each one returning gently from sleep, as if guided by the same invisible rhythm that has brought them to this moment every day before. There is no surprise in waking. No confusion. Only the slow awareness of being here again. The body remembers before the mind fully does. Clothing is reached for in silence. Movements are soft, unhurried, familiar. There is no need to think about what comes next. It is already known. Downstairs, or in shared spaces, the faint beginnings of warmth return. A fire may be lit again, or rekindled from embers left behind. The process is simple, practiced, almost automatic. The glow slowly grows, bringing light back into corners that had been dark through the night. Breakfast follows in its usual form. Simple. Steady. Unchanged. Food prepared in the same way it always has been, eaten without pause, without expectation of something different. The body receives what it needs quietly, without question. And then the day begins. Again. As it always does. Children step outside into the returning light. The air is cool, familiar, carrying the faint memory of night but already leaning toward the warmth of day. The streets begin to fill once more with movement that has been repeated so many times it feels almost natural as breathing. The rhythm resumes. Work. Study. Tasks. Routines. All returning in their steady sequence. There is no need for explanation. No need for adjustment. Everything falls back into place as if it never left. And within this return, there is something deeply consistent. Not excitement. Not change. But continuation. A life that moves forward not in leaps, but in gentle cycles. Morning to afternoon. Afternoon to evening. Evening to night. Night back to morning again. Each part flowing into the next without resistance. And the children move within it. As they always have. As they always will. Not outside the pattern. Not apart from it. But carried gently by it. And so the new day settles fully into place. Soft. Familiar. Complete in its repetition. And quietly, the world continues on. The morning is now fully present. The light no longer feels uncertain. It has settled into the streets, into the homes, into the quiet corners where daily life begins its steady return. There is a softness to it, as if the world has gently remembered itself after the long night. Everything feels familiar again. Not because anything is new, but because nothing has changed. Inside the homes, children are already moving through the early shape of the day. Their steps are slow at first, still carrying the softness of sleep, but becoming steadier with each passing moment. The quiet routines return naturally, without need for instruction or reminder. Hands wash. Clothes are adjusted. Simple tasks begin again. Each movement fits into place like something already known, already practiced many times before. There is no hesitation in these actions. Only continuation. Downstairs, the warmth of the morning grows slowly. A fire, small at first, begins to steady itself, casting a gentle glow that reaches into the room. It is not bright in a sharp way. It is calm, even, familiar. The kind of warmth that does not demand attention. Only presence. Breakfast follows in the same quiet manner as always. Simple food. Prepared the same way it was yesterday. And the day before that. Children eat without hurry. Not because they are told to, but because the rhythm of the morning allows nothing else. There is no reason to rush. No reason to linger. Only the steady act of beginning again. Outside, the city is already alive. Not suddenly. Not loudly. But in its usual gradual way. Doors open. Footsteps return to the streets. Small movements begin to fill the space between buildings once more. The world resumes its familiar pace, as if it had never fully stopped. Children step into it. They walk the same paths they walked before. They pass the same corners. They follow the same routes that have shaped their days for as long as they can remember. There is comfort in that repetition. Not comfort in ease alone, but in certainty. In knowing what comes next without needing to ask. Inside workshops and learning spaces, the rhythm of work begins again. Tools are lifted. Pages are opened. Hands return to familiar tasks with quiet understanding. The sounds of the day begin to form once more. Soft. Steady. Repeating. And in that repetition, there is a kind of calm that settles into everything. A calm that does not depend on change, but on consistency. Hours move forward. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just steadily. The sun climbs higher, though it does so without urgency. Its light spreads evenly across the world, touching everything in the same quiet way it always has. Shadows shift. Time continues. And the children remain within it. Not watching it pass, but moving through it. Step by step. Task by task. Moment by moment. There is little distance between one part of the day and the next. Each blends into the other smoothly, without interruption. Morning becomes afternoon without notice. Afternoon will become evening in the same way. And the cycle will continue again. As it always does. And within this steady flow, there is something unchanging. A rhythm that holds everything together without needing to be seen. A structure that exists not as something imposed, but as something lived. And so the day continues. Quiet. Familiar. Endlessly repeating. And the children move with it, as they always have, as they always will, within the soft, steady pattern of their lives. The afternoon settles in again, quietly, without announcement. The light changes its tone in a way that is almost too gradual to notice. It becomes warmer, softer, stretching across the streets and rooftops with a kind of patient steadiness. Shadows lengthen once more, not sharply, but gently, as if the world is slowly leaning toward evening without urgency. Inside the workshops, the rhythm continues. It has never truly paused. The same movements repeat, shaped by habit now more than thought. Hands reach, adjust, carry, and return. Tools are lifted and placed down again. Cloth is handled with care. Wood is shaped slowly. Paper is filled with lines that look almost identical to the ones written before. There is comfort in this repetition. Not excitement. Not variation. But the quiet reassurance that nothing is uncertain here. Everything follows a pattern already known. A child pauses briefly. Just for a breath. Not stopping. Only resting within the motion, as if the body itself needs a small space to exist between tasks. The pause is not noticed by anyone else. It is not marked. It simply passes and becomes part of the larger flow again. And the work continues. Outside, the streets carry the same steady life. The sound of footsteps, distant voices, small movements passing from one place to another. The city does not feel busy in a sharp way anymore. It feels continuous. Like a long, unbroken breath. Children move through it without hesitation. Their direction is already decided. Their purpose already understood. They do not look for alternatives, because there is no sense that alternatives exist in this moment. Only the path in front of them, gently repeating itself day after day. In homes, the afternoon quiet deepens slightly. Tasks become slower. Movements softer. A sense of gradual easing begins to settle into the space, though nothing has yet ended. A child sits near a window again. The light outside has changed since morning. It no longer carries the brightness of early day. It feels lower, warmer, as if it is slowly preparing to leave. The child watches without thinking too deeply. Not searching. Not wondering. Just present for a moment within the light that passes across the glass. And then, as always, the moment passes. The attention returns inward. To small tasks. To familiar motions. To the steady rhythm of the afternoon. In larger homes, lessons begin to slow again. The structure is still there, but softer now. The voice of instruction carries less weight than earlier in the day. Pages turn more slowly. Words are repeated with less urgency. A child listens, their focus drifting gently in and out, not lost, but relaxed. Learning continues, but it is nearing its natural close for the day. And that is understood without needing to be spoken. Across all spaces, something subtle begins to shift. Not an ending. Not yet. But a soft easing. As if the day itself is beginning to loosen its grip. The body recognizes this before the mind does. Movements become slightly slower. Breath slightly deeper. Attention slightly less sharp. And still, everything continues. Because the pattern has not yet reached its final turn. The sun lowers a little more. The sky begins to hold warmer tones again, fading slowly into the approach of evening. The light stretches across the world in long, gentle lines, touching everything with a soft, fading glow. And within that glow, children continue their work. Not resisting. Not rushing. Just moving forward through the remaining hours. Step by step. As they always have. As they always will. And the day continues its slow, steady journey toward evening, without pause, without change, only gentle continuation. Evening begins its quiet return, not as an arrival, but as a soft fading of what was already here. The light grows lower, warmer, and thinner across the streets. It no longer holds the same brightness it once did. Instead, it spreads gently, almost carefully, as if it is trying not to disturb the world it is leaving behind. Everything feels slower now. Not because anything has stopped, but because the day itself is loosening its grip. Inside the workshops, the final stretch of work continues. The same steady motions remain, but they are softer now, less sharp, less firm. Hands move with the memory of effort rather than its urgency. The body knows what must be finished, and it moves toward that ending without resistance. A child adjusts their posture slightly. Not to rest fully. Just to ease the weight of the day for a moment. Then the movement resumes again. This small pattern repeats quietly across the room, unnoticed, unspoken, but present everywhere. A slow easing that belongs to the end of the day itself. Outside, the streets carry the same gentle shift. The sound of movement is still there, but it feels more distant now, as if the world is slowly stepping away from its own activity. Footsteps continue, but less frequently. Voices rise and fall, but more softly than before. Children walking through this space feel the change without needing to understand it. Their steps remain steady, but there is a subtle heaviness now. Not fatigue in a sharp sense, but the quiet weight that comes after hours of repeating familiar work. They continue forward because that is what has always been done. And that is enough. In homes, the air begins to feel different again. Evening brings a softness that settles into every corner. The light indoors becomes more noticeable as the outside world dims. Lamps are lit slowly, one by one, each adding a small circle of calm to the growing quiet. Simple tasks continue. But they are fewer now. Less urgent. More like gentle closing gestures at the end of something long. A child folds something carefully, taking their time without being rushed. Another places an object back where it belongs, lingering for a moment before moving on. These are the final small movements of the day. In larger homes, lessons have fully slowed now. Books are closed. Pages no longer turned. The voices that guided the day have softened into silence or near silence. There is no longer instruction, only quiet presence. A child sits still for a moment longer than before. Not learning. Not moving. Just resting in the calm that has begun to settle around everything. And that stillness is not empty. It is full of completion. Across all places, the sense of ending becomes clearer. Not sudden. Not dramatic. But certain. The body understands it first. The shoulders relax. The breath deepens. The need to continue lessens slowly, naturally, as if the day itself is guiding everything toward rest. Outside, the sky continues its transformation. The colors shift from warm tones into softer shades, then into cooler ones as the sun lowers further. Shadows grow longer, then blend together. The world becomes quieter in appearance, even before it becomes quiet in sound. Children return home in the same steady way they always do. There is no rush. No delay. Only the familiar path back. And when they arrive, the final parts of the day begin. Simple meals are prepared. Soft movements fill the rooms. The last small tasks are completed with care, not urgency. Everything moves toward closure. And within that closure, there is a gentle calm that spreads slowly, like warmth settling into a room at the end of a long day. Children sit together or near one another, or sometimes alone, but always in quiet. There is little need for words now. The day has already spoken in its own way. And now, it begins to release them. One by one. Into stillness. Into rest. Into the soft beginning of night. And so the evening deepens. Quietly. Steadily. Until the world becomes still once again, waiting for the return of sleep, and the gentle promise of another morning. Night returns in the same gentle way it always does. Not suddenly, not sharply, but like a slow closing of the world's eyes. The last traces of evening light fade from windows and streets, leaving behind a soft darkness that settles evenly over everything. Inside the homes, quiet grows deeper. Not empty quiet, but full quiet, the kind that gathers in corners, rests in wooden floors, and hangs softly in the air like something familiar and understood. Children are already preparing for sleep. There is no rush in their movements. No urgency. Only the natural slowing that comes at the end of a long, steady day. Each action is small, simple, and practiced many times before. A blanket is adjusted. A space is made comfortable. A final moment of stillness is taken before lying down. The world outside is almost entirely still now. The sounds of the day have faded into near silence. What remains is distant and soft, like echoes that no longer belong to anything active. Even time feels slower here, as if it has softened its pace to match the night. Inside, children lie down. One by one. Quietly. Without ceremony. Their bodies settle into rest as naturally as they have every night before this one. There is no resistance. No hesitation. Only the gentle release of effort, of movement, of thought. Breathing slows. Shoulders relax. Hands rest still. And sleep begins its quiet return. It does not arrive all at once. It comes slowly, like a soft wave rising over still water. Thoughts fade without struggle. Awareness drifts without direction. The mind loosens its hold on the day, letting go of everything it carried without needing to keep it. And soon, there is only stillness. Across the city, the same pattern unfolds. Homes grow darker one by one. Lights dim or disappear. Windows become quiet squares of black against the night. Everything that was active during the day now rests in the same calm state. Not forgotten. Not ended. Just paused. Held gently by the night. Time continues to move, but without weight. Without urgency. It passes softly, as if it does not want to disturb anything. Hours flow into one another without distinction. And within that flow, children sleep. Deeply. Steadily. Without interruption. Their rest is simple, but complete. Not shaped by dreams of change or escape, but by the natural need for quiet restoration after a day that has followed its familiar pattern. There is peace in that simplicity. Not because everything is easy, but because everything is known. And what is known does not demand explanation. It simply continues. The night holds everything gently. The city, the homes, the small lives within them all resting in the same quiet rhythm. Nothing presses forward. Nothing pulls back. Everything is still. And yet, beneath that stillness, there is movement waiting. Not visible. Not loud. But present. The subtle turning of time that never fully stops. Because even in rest, the cycle remains. Night will soften. Darkness will thin. And somewhere beyond the silence, the first hint of morning will begin again. But for now, there is only night. Only rest. Only the quiet, steady pause that holds the world together until it is time once more to begin. And so everything sleeps. Gently. Completely. And without end, the calm continues. The night deepens once more, settling into its fullest quiet. It is not a heavy darkness, but a complete one, soft, even, and still. It covers the city like a familiar presence, one that asks for nothing and disturbs nothing. Everything beneath it rests in the same slow rhythm. Inside the homes, sleep continues. Children lie in the same simple stillness they reached earlier, their bodies fully given over to rest now. The day is no longer present in their movements. It has loosened completely, leaving only calm behind. Breathing is steady. Unbroken. Even. There is no awareness of time passing here. No sense of minutes or hours. Only the deep, quiet continuity of sleep holding everything in place. Outside, the world is still. The streets are empty now, not just of movement, but of intention. The places that were filled during the day now rest in silence. Buildings stand unchanged, holding the memory of activity without needing to repeat it. A soft wind may pass through occasionally. Gentle. Barely noticeable. It moves through narrow spaces and disappears without sound, as if even the air is careful not to disturb anything. The night continues in this way. Without interruption. Without change. Inside, children remain asleep. Their rest is not fragile. It is steady, settled, and complete. The body continues its quiet work of restoration without effort or awareness. Everything that was used during the day is now gently released. Hands unclench. Muscles soften. Thoughts dissolve into stillness. There is no need to hold anything anymore. And so nothing is held. The world outside drifts through time in the same calm pattern. One moment blending into the next. No clear edges. No sharp divisions. Only the slow passage of night carrying everything forward. In this stillness, there is a kind of balance. Not perfect. Not dramatic. But steady. A balance built from repetition, from routine, from the quiet understanding that each day will follow the same path, and each night will return to the same rest. And because of this, nothing feels uncertain. Nothing feels unstable. Everything is held within a rhythm that does not need to be questioned. It simply continues. Far beyond the reach of waking thoughts, the city remains wrapped in this quiet state. And within it, the children sleep on. Unaware of the passing hours. Unaware of the slow shift toward morning that has already begun somewhere beyond the edge of darkness. Because even now, while everything rests, the cycle does not stop. It only waits. Patiently. Softly. For the next return of light. And so the night holds steady. Full. Calm. Unmoving in appearance, yet always gently turning forward. Until the moment it will begin again, as it always has, without breaking, without end, only continuing. The night is still present, but it no longer feels absolute. Something subtle has changed in its texture. The darkness remains, yet it seems lighter at its edges, as if it is slowly beginning to release its hold on the world. Nothing is visible yet, but the feeling of change is there, quiet and patient. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their bodies are still, their breathing slow and even, shaped by the long rhythm of rest that follows every day. There is no awareness of the shift outside. No sense that anything is approaching. Only the steady calm of deep sleep. The rooms remain quiet. Familiar. Undisturbed. Even the smallest sounds seem softened by the night, as if they are being carefully held away from waking anything too soon. Outside, the city remains still. But stillness here is never truly empty. It is full of presence without movement. Full of time passing without noise. Full of everything that has already happened during the day, now resting in place like memory held gently in the air. A faint change begins to gather beyond the horizon. Not light yet. Only the suggestion of it. A thinning of darkness so subtle it could almost be missed. But it is there. As it always is at this hour. Inside, the night children shift slightly in sleep. Not waking. Not yet. Just small movements that belong to the body's natural rhythm through the night. A gentle adjustment. A quiet breath. A moment of deeper stillness that follows. Sleep continues to hold them fully. And within that sleep, there is calm. The kind of calm that does not need awareness to exist. The kind that simply is. Outside, time continues its slow, quiet turning. The night does not resist its ending. It never does. Instead, it loosens gradually, like something softening its grip without effort. Darkness remains, but it is no longer unchanged. It begins to shift in ways that are almost impossible to notice unless one is still enough to feel them. A subtle lifting. A faint easing. A quiet preparation for what always comes next. Inside the homes, everything remains at rest. But even rest has its rhythm. A deeper breath here. A softer exhale there. The body continues its unseen work of recovery, of balance, of quiet restoration. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing disturbs it. And so it continues without resistance. The world outside does not hurry. It never has. Morning will come when it is ready, not before. And until then, the night holds everything in a soft, steady pause. Not ending. Not beginning. Only continuing in its slow, natural flow. And somewhere beyond the edge of darkness, the first true hint of light gathers again. Not as arrival, but as promise. A quiet return that has already happened countless times before, and will continue long after this moment has passed. For now, everything remains still. And in that stillness, the world waits gently for the next breath of morning. The night now feels thinner than before. Not gone. Not changed in any dramatic way. But softened, as if it has begun to loosen its hold on the world. Darkness still covers everything, yet it no longer feels entirely complete. There are faint edges to it now, subtle and quiet. Inside the homes, sleep continues. Children remain still, resting deeply within the calm that has carried them through the night. Their bodies are steady, their breathing even, their minds far away from any sense of time or place. There is no awareness of change. Only rest. Only stillness. The rooms around them remain quiet, unchanged in appearance. The same simple spaces. The same familiar arrangement. Nothing shifts here except the passage of time itself. Outside, the city holds its breath. Not in tension, but in pause. A pause that has become natural through repetition. The kind of pause that exists every night, without question, without effort. And yet, something is beginning again. Not movement. Not sound. But light. Very faint at first. Almost indistinguishable from the remaining darkness. A softening at the edges of the sky that suggests something beyond night is waiting quietly behind it. Inside, a child stirs slightly in sleep. A small movement. Almost nothing. Just the body adjusting itself as it continues to rest through the final hours of night. There is no awareness behind it. No transition into waking yet. Only the natural rhythm of sleep continuing its slow course. The world remains calm. Unbroken. Still. And yet the cycle moves forward. As it always does. Outside, the darkness begins to shift in subtle layers. It does not retreat quickly. It does not disappear. It simply changes shape, becoming less dense, less absolute. The sky holds a faint suggestion of depth where before there was only night. Time continues its quiet movement. Without interruption. Without urgency. Inside the homes, children remain in deep rest. Their bodies are held gently by the final stretch of sleep, where everything slows even further, where even dreams become softer and more distant. There is no need for anything else in this moment. No need for waking. No need for thought. Only the calm continuation of being at rest. And beyond this stillness, something familiar begins to form again. Not new. Not unfamiliar. But the same gentle return that has always followed the night. A slow unfolding. A soft arrival that does not rush, does not demand, but simply comes when the world is ready. The night does not end suddenly. It never has. It fades. Gradually. Quietly. Like breath leaving a sleeping world. And in that fading, everything remains held in balance. Everything remains as it is. Until the first true light returns again, and the cycle begins once more. The final hours of night pass in a deep, quiet stillness. It is a stillness that feels complete, as if the world has settled fully into itself and has no intention of moving yet. Darkness remains, but it is no longer as heavy as before. It feels lighter, stretched thin across the sky like a soft veil. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their bodies rest in the same gentle positions they have held for hours now. There is no tension in them. No resistance. Only the slow, natural calm of deep sleep that continues without interruption. Breathing remains steady. Soft. Even. The rooms around them are unchanged. Familiar shapes in familiar places. Nothing new has entered this space, and nothing has left it. Everything is as it was, held in the quiet continuity of the night. Outside, the city is still. Not empty. But fully quiet. A quiet that feels settled rather than waiting. The kind of quiet that has already accepted what it is, and no longer tries to become anything else. And yet, beneath it all, something continues to shift. Very slowly. Very gently. Not enough to be seen clearly, but enough to be felt in the deepest edges of the world. The darkness begins to soften. Not retreating. Not breaking. Just loosening its presence, like fabric gently easing away from something it has covered for a long time. Inside, a child breathes in slightly deeper during sleep. A natural movement. Small. Unnoticed. There is no waking yet. Only the continued passage of rest, carrying the body through the final stretch of night. Everything remains calm. Everything remains steady. The world does not hurry itself forward. It allows time to move at its own pace, as it always has. And in that slow movement, the first suggestion of morning grows again beyond the horizon. Not visible. Not defined. Only present in feeling. A quiet anticipation that belongs not to thought, but to the natural rhythm of the world itself. Inside the homes, sleep continues without interruption. There is no urgency in the night now. No tension in its passing. Only the gentle easing towards something that is always coming, always returning, always waiting just beyond the edge of darkness. The cycle continues without effort. Without question. Without change. And in that continuation, there is a quiet steadiness that holds everything together. The kind of steadiness that does not need to be seen to be understood. The night remains. Soft. Thin. Fading at its edges. And beyond it, morning waits patiently, as it always does, ready to return again, in the same gentle way it has returned every day before this one. The night is almost finished now, though it does not announce its ending. It simply becomes quieter in its own way, as if it is slowly setting everything back into place for the return of morning. The darkness is still present, but it no longer feels as complete as before. There is a softness around its edges now, a faint thinning that gently changes the feeling of the world. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their rest is steady, uninterrupted, and deep enough to carry them through these final moments of night. Nothing disturbs them. Nothing calls them early. They remain where they are, held gently by the calm that has lasted through so many hours. The rooms are still. The air is still. Even time feels still, though it continues to move forward in its quiet way. Outside, the city is wrapped in silence. A silence that is not empty, but full of waiting that does not feel urgent. Everything is held in place for just a little longer, as if the world is taking one final breath before it begins again. And then, very gently, change continues. Not as a break. Not as a shift that can be clearly marked. But as a soft unfolding. The darkness begins to loosen further. It does not disappear. It simply becomes less heavy, less absolute, as faint layers of something lighter begin to gather behind it. Inside, a child's breathing changes slightly in sleep. A small shift. Natural. Unaware. The body continues its rhythm of rest, but the deepest part of night is beginning to pass now, even if no one notices it yet. There is no separation between night and morning here. Only a slow blending. One becoming the other without resistance. Outside, the horizon holds the faintest suggestion of light again. Not bright. Not defined. Only present as a quiet possibility that grows with time. The world does not rush toward it. It never does. It simply allows it to arrive in its own steady way. Inside the homes, children remain in sleep. Their rest continues to hold them gently, as it has through every night before this one. There is nothing new in this moment. Nothing uncertain. Only the familiar rhythm of life moving through its cycle. And somewhere within that cycle, morning is already forming. Softly. Slowly. Without interruption. The night does not end in a single moment. It fades. It loosens. It becomes lighter until it is no longer fully night at all. And in that fading, everything remains calm. Everything remains unchanged in its nature. Only time moves forward. Only the world shifts gently from one state into another. And as the final trace of darkness begins to thin, the promise of morning returns once more, steady, quiet, and certain, as it always has been, and as it always will be. The last stretch of night feels almost weightless now. Darkness is still present, but it no longer holds the same depth. It lingers more softly, like a memory of night rather than its full presence. The world feels suspended in a quiet in-between, where nothing is fully one thing or another. Inside the homes, sleep remains steady. Children lie still, their bodies fully at rest, shaped by the long familiarity of this cycle. There is no awareness of how close morning is. No sense of waiting. Only the natural continuation of sleep as it moves through its final phase. Everything is calm. Everything is unchanged. Outside, the sky has begun its slow return. Not in brightness, not yet, but in softness. The darkness thins at the horizon in ways that are almost impossible to notice unless one is still enough to feel them. It is a gradual easing. A quiet transition. Like the world slowly remembering itself again. Inside, a child shifts slightly in sleep. A gentle movement that belongs entirely to the body, not the mind. There is no awakening behind it. Only the deep rhythm of rest continuing as it always has. The night is no longer deep. But it is still present. Still holding everything in a soft, fading embrace. And within that embrace, time moves forward. Without sound. Without interruption. The city outside remains still. Yet it is not the same stillness as before. It is a stillness that carries anticipation within it, not in thought, but in structure. A natural expectation built into the rhythm of everything that exists here. Morning is coming. Not quickly. Not suddenly, but inevitably. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their breathing remains even, their bodies at ease, their minds far away from any awareness of the world outside. This is the final part of rest. The quiet edge between night and waking. And it passes without resistance. Outside, the faintest suggestion of light begins to strengthen just slightly. Still not visible in full form. Still not defined. But enough to change the feeling of the sky. Enough to make darkness feel less complete. The world does not shift all at once. It never does. It moves in layers. In softness. In continuity. And so the night continues to fade, not as an ending, but as a transition that has already been happening for some time. Inside, everything remains calm. The children remain asleep. And the world waits in its quiet balance. Until the moment when night becomes morning once again, and the cycle gently begins anew, as it always has, and as it always will. The final moments of night stretch out gently, as if the world is reluctant to separate itself from the calm it has known for so long. There is no sharp boundary between darkness and light now. Only a slow blending, where one soft state becomes another without resistance. The sky holds both night and the suggestion of morning at the same time, though neither is fully complete. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their rest is steady, unbroken, and deep in the way that only long familiarity can create. Nothing disturbs them. Nothing calls them early. They remain held in the same quiet stillness they entered hours ago. The rooms are unchanged. The air is still. Even the smallest sounds seem distant, as if they belong to another layer of the world that is far away from this moment of rest. Outside, the city is quiet in its most complete form. Not empty, but fully settled. A kind of quiet that feels natural, as if the world has always existed in this state and is simply waiting for what comes next. And then, slowly, the change continues. The darkness begins to soften further. Not fading quickly. Not breaking apart. Just thinning, as if something gentle is pressing lightly against it from beyond the horizon. Inside, a child breathes in a little deeper during sleep. A natural rhythm of the body. Nothing more. Nothing less. Sleep continues without interruption, but the final edge of night is beginning to pass. Outside, the sky grows slightly less heavy. There is no clear light yet, only a subtle shift in tone. A faint sense that the world is no longer fully enclosed in darkness. Time moves forward quietly. Without sound. Without urgency. Inside the homes, children remain still. Their bodies rest in complete ease, shaped by repetition and familiarity. There is no tension in them, no awareness of transition. Only the ongoing calm of sleep carrying them through the final moments before morning. And beyond them, the world continues its slow return. Not as an event, but as a process. A gradual unfolding that happens every day without fail. The horizon holds a faint suggestion now. Still soft. Still distant. But no longer purely night. Something lighter is present, even if it cannot yet be named. And the night, in response, becomes quieter still. As if it is making space. As if it is preparing to let go. Inside, everything remains unchanged. The children sleep on. The rooms remain still. The quiet continues. And the world moves gently forward through its familiar rhythm. There is no moment where night ends and morning begins. Only a slow crossing. A soft transition that cannot be separated into parts. And in that seamless movement, everything remains calm. Everything remains steady. Everything remains as it always has been. Until the final trace of darkness begins to loosen, and the first full breath of morning is ready to return again. The night is now only a thin presence. It no longer feels like something that holds the world fully. Instead, it feels like something gently fading from it, leaving behind a quiet softness that lingers in the air. There is still darkness, but it is lighter now. Less complete. Less absolute. It sits over the city like a memory of itself, slowly giving way to something that has not yet fully arrived. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their rest continues without disturbance, shaped by the long rhythm of night and the natural cycle that has guided them through countless days before this one. There is no awareness of change within them. Only the steady continuation of sleep. The rooms are still. The air is still. Everything remains in its familiar place, held gently by the final stretch of night. Outside, the sky has begun to shift more clearly now. Not into full light, but into something softer between darkness and morning. A faint grayness spreads across the horizon, subtle but persistent, as if the world is slowly remembering how to become visible again. Time moves forward without sound. Without interruption. Without notice. Inside, a child stirs slightly. A small movement that belongs entirely to the body, not the mind. There is no waking yet. Only the natural motion of sleep as it approaches its end. The night continues to loosen. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But evenly, like something slowly releasing its hold after a long and gentle pause. Outside, the city remains quiet. But it is no longer the same quiet as before. It now carries a sense of transition within it. A feeling that nothing is fully one thing anymore, and everything is slowly becoming something else. The darkness at the horizon thins further. And beyond it, a soft presence begins to grow. Not light yet in its full form, but the beginning of light. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their breathing remains steady, their bodies calm, their rest uninterrupted. The final part of night passes through them without awareness, as it always does. There is no resistance. No change in rhythm. Only continuation. And within that continuation, the world begins its slow return. Not as a sudden arrival, but as a gentle unfolding that has always followed the night. Everything remains calm. Everything remains still. And yet, everything is moving forward in its quiet way. Toward the first full breath of morning. Toward the soft return of light. Toward the beginning of another day that will follow the same familiar path. And so the night fades, not in ending, but in release, allowing the world to turn once again toward morning, as it always has, and as it always will. The final trace of night lingers like a soft veil that is slowly being lifted. It is still present, but it no longer defines the world. The darkness feels thinner now, more like a shadow of itself, stretched gently across the sky as it waits to dissolve into something lighter. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their rest remains deep, steady, and unbroken. Nothing reaches them from the outside world. No awareness of change. No sense of time shifting. Only the calm continuation of sleep as it carries them through the last quiet moments before morning. The rooms are unchanged. The air is still. Even the faintest sounds seem distant, softened by the long presence of night that has now nearly passed. Outside, the sky is beginning to open. Not fully. Not brightly. But enough that the darkness no longer feels complete. A soft gray light spreads slowly along the horizon, blending with what remains of night in a gentle and natural transition. There is no sharp boundary between what was and what is coming. Only a gradual blending. A quiet unfolding. Inside, a child breathes out slowly in sleep. A small, natural movement that belongs to the rhythm of rest. There is no waking yet. Only the body continuing its calm journey through the final stretch of night. The world outside remains still. But it is a different kind of stillness now. A stillness that carries change within it. Not sudden change. Not loud change. But the kind that happens so slowly it can only be felt, not seen. The darkness at the edge of the sky continues to thin. And something new begins to form behind it. Not fully visible. Not fully defined. But present nonetheless. Morning, still distant, is already on its way. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their bodies are at ease, shaped by the long rhythm of daily life. There is no tension, no resistance, no interruption. Only rest continuing as it has for hours. Everything remains calm. Everything remains steady. And yet the cycle continues to turn. Outside, the sky grows a shade lighter. Not by much. Not all at once. But enough to change the feeling of the world again. Night is no longer holding everything fully. It is beginning to release. Slowly. Softly. Like breath leaving a sleeping world. Inside, nothing changes yet. But everything is ready. The world is poised between two states, suspended in a quiet transition that happens every day without fail. And within that transition, there is a deep and steady calm. A calm that does not end. A calm that simply continues. Until the final moment arrives, when night finally gives way completely, and morning returns again, as it always does, without interruption, without urgency, and without end. The night is almost gone now, though it still clings gently to the edges of the world. It does not resist. It does not hold on tightly. It simply remains for a little while longer, like something that knows its time is nearly complete and is quietly stepping aside. The sky is no longer dark in the same way. It is softer now. Lighter. A deep gray blue that slowly blends into something brighter beyond it. The change is so gradual that it feels less like an ending and more like a continuation of the same long breath the world has been holding through the night. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their rest is steady and peaceful, shaped by repetition and familiarity. There is no sense of urgency in their sleep, no disruption, no awareness of what is shifting outside. Only the quiet continuation of rest, as it always has been at this hour. The rooms are still. The air is still. Everything remains in place, unchanged, as the final moments of night pass through the world. Outside, the horizon begins to open more clearly now. Not bright yet, but no longer dark. A soft line of light gathers where sky meets earth, faint but persistent, as if the world is slowly remembering how to become visible again. Time moves forward gently. Without sound. Without interruption. Inside, a child stirs slightly in sleep. A natural, quiet movement. Nothing more. The body adjusts, as it always does during the transition between deep rest and the lighter edge of morning. There is still no waking. Only the slow drift of sleep continuing toward its end. The night is almost finished now. Not in a sudden way. But in the way it always ends, by becoming something softer, something lighter, until it is no longer fully night at all. Outside, the sky continues to change. The grayness begins to lift in places. Subtle hints of brightness appear, spreading slowly, carefully, without rushing the world into the next moment. There is no clear boundary where night ends and morning begins. Only a quiet merging. A seamless passage. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their breathing remains calm, even, unchanged. They are held gently in the final stretch of rest, where everything is still and nothing interrupts the natural rhythm of the body. Everything is as it should be. Everything remains at peace. And then, gradually, almost without notice, the night gives way. Not all at once. Not completely in a single moment. But enough that the world feels different again. The sky grows lighter. The horizon opens. The faint promise of morning becomes more present, more real, more certain. And within this gentle turning, everything remains calm. Everything remains steady. Everything remains exactly as it has always been. Because this is the cycle that never breaks. Night softens into morning. Morning grows into day. And life continues forward in its quiet, familiar rhythm, as it always has, and as it always will. The night has almost fully surrendered now, though it does so without drama, without any clear moment of ending. It simply becomes less and less of itself. The darkness that once filled everything is now only a lingering presence at the edges of the sky, fading into a soft, pale gray that stretches quietly across the horizon. Inside the homes, children still sleep. Their bodies remain in deep rest, unchanged by the shift outside. There is no awareness of morning yet. No sense that anything is different. Only the steady rhythm of sleep that continues to hold them gently in place. Everything inside remains still. Familiar. Quiet. Outside, the sky is no longer dark in any full sense. It is opening now. Slowly. Softly. A thin layer of light begins to spread across the world, not bright enough to fully define anything yet, but enough to change the feeling of everything it touches. Shadows lose their depth. Shapes become more visible. The world begins to return to sight. Time continues its quiet movement forward. Without sound. Without urgency. Inside, a child breathes in slightly deeper during sleep. A small change, part of the natural rhythm of the body as it moves through the final stages of rest. There is still no waking. Only the gentle continuation of sleep as it begins to loosen its hold. The night is nearly gone now. Not because it has been pushed away, but because it has simply completed its passage. It fades the way it always fades. Not all at once, but gradually, until it is no longer fully present. Outside, the horizon brightens a little more. The soft gray shifts towards something lighter, something closer to morning. The change is quiet but steady, as if the world itself is slowly opening its eyes. Inside the homes, nothing else changes yet. Children remain asleep. Their rest is deep and uninterrupted. The rooms around them are still, unchanged in structure, unchanged in feeling, held gently between night and morning. And yet, everything is beginning to move forward again. The cycle continues. Not because it is forced, but because it is natural. The night does not end in a moment. It dissolves into the beginning of day. And as it does, the world follows along in its quiet, steady rhythm. Morning is not fully here yet. But it is close now. Close enough to feel. Close enough to shape the sky. And so everything remains calm in this final space between darkness and light. A space that always passes. A space that always returns. And within it, the world waits gently, for the next full arrival of morning, as it always has, and as it always will. The final breath of night is almost indistinguishable now. It no longer feels like something holding the world. Instead, it feels like something being gently carried away, layer by layer, as if the sky itself is slowly releasing what it no longer needs. The darkness is still present, but only in traces. It lingers in the far corners of the sky, where light has not fully reached yet. Everywhere else, a soft, quiet brightness begins to grow. Not strong, not sharp, just steady and patient, like the world easing itself into awareness. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their rest remains deep and unbroken, shaped by the long familiarity of this cycle. There is no awareness of the shift outside. No sense of the approaching morning. Only the calm continuation of sleep, as steady as ever. Everything inside remains unchanged. Still. Familiar. Outside, the sky is now clearly no longer night. It is something in between. A pale, quiet morning light begins to spread more fully, softening every edge it touches. The horizon is no longer dark, but gently illuminated, as if the world is slowly remembering its own shape again. Time moves forward without interruption. Without sound. Without urgency. Inside, a child stirs slightly again. A small movement that belongs to the natural rhythm of sleep nearing its end. The body shifts, not waking yet, but moving closer to that quiet threshold where rest begins to loosen. The night is nearly complete in its passage. Not ending abruptly, but dissolving, as it always does, into something new. Outside, the light grows a little stronger. Not bright enough to fully awaken the world yet, but enough to make everything feel different. Softer. More open. Less enclosed. The sky is no longer dark above the city. It is becoming morning. Slowly. Naturally. Without effort. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their breathing steady, their bodies calm, their minds far from any awareness of change. They are held gently in the final stillness of night, where everything is quiet and nothing interrupts the slow rhythm of rest. And within this stillness, the world continues to turn. Night does not resist morning. It never has. It simply gives way. Softly. Gradually. As if it was always meant to do so. And so the sky continues to brighten, and the darkness continues to fade, until the world is held in that familiar, quiet space where one day ends and another begins. A space that always passes. A space that always returns. And as it does, everything remains calm, steady, and unchanged in its gentle, endless rhythm. The last traces of night finally grow faint, almost delicate now, as if they are only remembered rather than truly present. Darkness no longer holds the sky. It only lingers in small, quiet pockets where the light has not yet fully reached. Everywhere else, a soft morning glow spreads slowly, evenly, without urgency. It is not bright yet. But it is enough. Enough to change the feeling of the world. Inside the homes, children continue to sleep. Their rest remains deep and steady, shaped by the long, familiar rhythm of days that always end the same way and begin the same way. There is no awareness of the change outside. No sense that night is leaving. Only the quiet continuation of sleep. Everything inside remains still. The rooms are unchanged. The air is calm. Outside, the sky is now clearly in transition. The darkness is nearly gone, replaced by a gentle, pale light that stretches across the horizon. It spreads slowly upward, touching rooftops and streets with a soft, early glow. The world is no longer in night, but not fully in day yet. It rests in that quiet in-between space that always comes at this hour. Time moves forward gently, without interruption, without sound. Inside, a child breathes more deeply in sleep. A subtle shift in the body, part of the natural rhythm that comes as rest begins to loosen its hold. Still no waking. Still no awareness. Only the slow, quiet movement toward morning. The night has almost fully completed its cycle now. It has done what it always does. It has held the world in rest. And now it is giving way. Outside, the light grows slightly stronger again. Not suddenly. Not sharply. But steadily, as if the world itself is slowly opening its eyes. Shadows soften further. Shapes become clearer. The city begins to take form again under the returning light. Inside the homes, children remain asleep. Their breathing remains even. Their bodies remain calm. The final stretch of rest continues without disturbance. Everything is still. Everything is familiar. And yet, everything is gently shifting forward. Because the cycle does not stop. It never has. Night always becomes morning. Morning always becomes day. And day always returns to night again. This rhythm does not ask for attention. It simply continues. And so, as the last fragments of darkness fade completely from the sky, the world settles into the quiet arrival of morning once more. Soft. Steady. Unbroken. And the day begins again, exactly as it always has, and exactly as it always will. Morning is now fully present, though it arrives without any sharp beginning. There is no single moment where night disappears and day takes its place. Instead, the light has simply grown, layer by layer, until it fills the sky completely with a soft, even brightness. The world is visible again. Not in a harsh way, but in a calm, steady way that feels familiar and expected. Inside the homes, children still sleep. Even though the light has returned, their rest continues for a little while longer. The body does not wake at the exact moment of morning. It follows its own quiet rhythm, finishing what the night has begun. The rooms are gently lit now. Soft light enters through windows and small openings, touching walls and floors with a pale glow. Nothing changes in shape, but everything feels slightly different in the presence of day. Outside, the city begins to stir. Very slowly. Not all at once. A distant sound here. A faint movement there. The first small signs of life returning to the streets. But it is still quiet. Still calm. Still gentle. Inside, a child begins to wake. Not suddenly. Not with awareness all at once. But with a slow return. Eyes open slightly, then close again. A breath deepens. The body shifts. Sleep loosens its hold just enough to begin the transition. There is no rush to rise. No urgency. Only the quiet unfolding of waking. And one by one, this gentle process begins to spread. Across rooms. Across homes. Across the quiet city. Children begin to return to the day. Slowly. Naturally. Without resistance. They sit up. They move slightly. They begin the small, familiar motions that always follow waking. Clothing is reached for. Blankets are folded back. Simple routines begin again. There is no confusion in these actions. No hesitation. Everything is already known. Everything is already understood. Outside, the city continues to wake. The sounds grow slightly more frequent. Footsteps return to the streets. Doors open. Voices, soft and distant, begin to appear again. The world resumes its steady rhythm. And the children step back into it. As they always do. As they always have. Morning becomes the beginning once more. Not of something new, but of something familiar. A continuation of the same quiet pattern that shapes each day. And within that pattern, there is a deep sense of steadiness. A calm that does not come from change, but from repetition. From knowing what comes next without needing to think. And so the day begins again. Softly. Gently. Without interruption. And the children move forward into it, step by step, carried once more by the quiet, endless rhythm of their lives. The morning settles fully into place, as if it had always been there. The light no longer feels new. It becomes part of everything again, resting on rooftops, slipping through windows, spreading across the narrow paths and open spaces of the city. It is soft, even, and steady, without urgency or change. Inside the homes, children are now awake. Not all at once. Not in any hurried way. But gradually, each one has moved from sleep into the quiet awareness of morning. Their movements are gentle, shaped by habit, guided by a rhythm they no longer need to think about. They sit up slowly. They adjust their clothing. They begin the same simple actions that have begun every day before this one. There is no pause to consider the day ahead. No moment of questioning. Only the quiet continuation of what has always been done. Downstairs, the faint warmth of morning begins to gather. A fire is lit or stirred from what remained in the night. Its glow is small at first, then steady, bringing a soft warmth into the room. It does not change quickly. It grows in its own time, just as everything else does. Breakfast follows. Simple. Unchanged. The same kinds of food prepared in the same careful way. There is no expectation of difference, no anticipation of something new. Only the quiet acceptance of what is given. Children eat steadily. Not quickly. Not slowly. Just as they always do. Each movement fits into place without effort. Outside, the city continues to wake. The early quiet begins to give way to gentle activity. Footsteps become more frequent. Doors open and close. The soft murmur of voices begins to fill the spaces between buildings. Nothing is loud. Nothing is rushed. Everything unfolds at a steady, familiar pace. Children step outside again. They follow the same paths. They pass the same places. They move toward the same destinations that have shaped their days for as long as they can remember. Their steps are sure. Their direction is clear. Not because they have planned it, but because it has always been this way. Inside workshops and learning spaces, the day begins again. Tools are lifted. Tasks are resumed. Lessons continue. Everything returns to its place in the quiet pattern of the day. There is no separation between yesterday and today. No sharp line between one moment and the next. Only a continuous flow. A rhythm that carries everything forward without interruption. And within that rhythm, children move without resistance. Not because their lives are simple, but because their lives are known. And what is known becomes part of the self. Part of the way the body moves. Part of the way the mind rests. Morning becomes something steady. Something complete. Something that does not need to be changed to be understood. And as the hours begin to pass once more, the day unfolds in the same quiet way it always has. soft, even, unbroken. And the children continue within it, step by step, moment by moment, carried gently by the familiar rhythm of their lives. And so the day continues, just as it always has. Morning settles into afternoon, though the change is so gentle it is hardly noticed. The light shifts slowly across the sky, the same way it has done countless times before. Shadows stretch, then soften, then stretch again. Children move within this pattern without pause. Their steps follow familiar paths. Their hands repeat familiar tasks. Their days unfold in quiet, steady motion, shaped not by sudden change, but by the soft certainty of what has always been. There is no clear beginning. There is no clear end. Only continuation. The world around them does not ask them to step outside of it. It does not ask them to question its shape. It simply carries them forward, one moment into the next, in the same calm rhythm that has guided every day before. Afternoon becomes evening. Evening returns to night. And night, once again, softens into morning. The cycle remains unbroken. Always turning. Always returning. And within that turning, the lives of these children unfold quietly. Not in great, dramatic moments, but in small, steady ones. In the way a hand moves across a surface. In the way footsteps fall along a worn path. In the way the light enters a room at the same hour each day. These small things become everything. They shape understanding. They shape acceptance. They shape the quiet way life is lived. And so, without needing to ask why, without needing to look beyond what is already known, the children continue. They rise when morning comes. They move through the day as it unfolds. They return to rest when night arrives. And in that gentle repetition, there is a kind of stillness. Not the stillness of nothingness, but the stillness of continuity. Of a life that does not break apart, but flows softly forward, day after day. There is no loud conclusion here. No final moment that marks an ending. Only the quiet understanding that this rhythm will continue, just as it always has. And so the light fades again. The evening deepens. The night returns. Children lie down once more in the same simple stillness, their bodies settling into rest without resistance, without hesitation. Breathing slows. The world grows quiet. And sleep comes gently, like a familiar presence that asks for nothing. Outside, the sky darkens. Inside, everything softens. And time continues its quiet movement, carrying the world forward without pause. Until, somewhere beyond the silence, the faintest hint of morning begins to form again. Softly. Gently. As it always does. And the cycle continues, without end, without change, only calm, steady motion, like a quiet breath that never truly fades.